Hi, welcome to our Social Change Historical Context presentation on the Black Lives Matter movement for Unit 3304, Leadership and Social Change. I'm going to give it off to Annalise to begin our presentation.
Okay, I'm doing the overview of the Black Lives Matter movement. Although this movement encompasses generations of injustice, the official Black Lives Matter organization wasn't established until 2013 after the acquittal of George Zimmerman. The mission of this movement involves not only combating white supremacy and building local power, but also to center Black voices and create opportunities for joy, innovation, and change within Black communities.
Contributions to society. So, when we think of the Black Lives Matter movement, we tend to know what it is, but many people still wonder what contributions is made to society as a whole. So, that first bullet point there, establish platform to create a voice for society, to actively speak out and take action towards social change. It kind of speaks to, since its founding in 2013, the Black Lives Matter movement's not only sparked deep thought and self-reflection for many, but it's also served as that driving force for those tough conversations that people would generally rather avoid in their daily lives. Talking about police brutality, social and racial injustices, and socioeconomic imbalances has never been easy, but with the movement, more people are becoming more comfortable with speaking up and speaking out about issues. Most importantly, the movement sparked social action. After the creation of BLM, we see an increase in people using their platforms to speak out against injustices everywhere. We see more non-violent acts of protest, and we see more action being taken on college campuses to combat racism and injustice. We also see that BLM has educated the public and provided resources to learn more and to serve the cause. We see how BLM has impacted the societal norm in regards to these daily controversial issues and these conversations that people have. Then we also see with the presence of BLM, 25% of their presence online comes from France, the UK, Canada, Australia, Germany, India, the Netherlands, Brazil, and Sweden. So they do have an international presence. And then if we look at their contributions on more of a smaller scale, just to get some specific physical things of what they've done. In 2020, they were in and contributed with the Juneteenth petition. They called to the community for co-sponsors for the Breathe Act. They also wrote up the letter opposing the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, and that was submitted to the record. They also drafted the letter to California Governor Gavin Newsom, calling on him to fill Kamala Harris's Senate seat with another Black woman once it was vacant. After she was elected vice president, they basically told the governor that replacing her seat with anyone other than a Black woman would be a step backwards in the representation for Black communities. They also wrote the letter to the Biden-Harris administration calling for a meeting with the Black Lives Matter movement, and that did actually happen. So those are just some contributions to society from the movement.
My name is Alexis Davis, and I'll be discussing the specific examples of the C's within the movement. We have 7 C's: the consciousness of self, congruence, commitment, collaboration, common purpose, controversy of civility, and citizenship. So the first topic I want to discuss is consciousness of self, which can be described as one's self-awareness is shaped by the influence of others. The example I wanted to pull from this was an article that followed 2 community leaders as they shared their experiences as putting together protests and having individuals coming out to them. Their names are Reverend Ebony Grimson and Matt Hall, and within the article it stated that they spent the day reflecting on how they memorialized George Floyd and his significance to the movement. Okay, the next C I want to discuss is congruence. That can be described as fostering a trust through authenticity. And for that, I would consider that being organizations that are led through a purpose of promoting Black culture as well as creating opportunities. The first organization that comes to mind, I don't want to name the Black Lives Matter movement organization because that would be too obvious, but the NAACP is another good example. Okay, the next C is commitment, which is described as a sense of responsibility as determined by passion and investment. I found an article discussing Tyler Perry and it reads, a year later, Perry offered a $100,000 reward for information on Terrence Williams and his disappearance. I think we can all remember back in 2019 that there was a lot of discussion about Terrence Williams. But Tyler Perry, as an example, him using his platform, being a celebrity, really shows that he's going the extra step and using his platform other than outlets of profit or notoriety. Collaboration is the intent to work together and thus multiply effort. For the example for collaboration, I found a music video called Black Lives Matter music video, and it's by the artist Dax. I thought that this idea was really cool to not only showcase visuals, but also create an impactful song that everybody can listen to, especially people of color who can also relate to the images being presented, and also to collab on such a big project that acquired almost 5 million views. That's a lot. So I thought that was a good way to collaborate with other people and get their perspectives and have so many people view that. Okay, the next C is common purpose, which is the concept of sharing one vision, though individual connections to it may differ. And for that, I thought about how when all the protests were happening last summer, we saw everybody react in a certain way, but it was hard to tell the motivations behind who was doing what, if that makes sense. Like, for example, we saw some protesters go out into the street and make impactful signs and speeches and testimonies as they were protesting. We saw other people, take a more violent approach. So as I thought of that, I thought that they all share one vision, but at the same time, they displayed that differently. Next, we have controversy of civility, which is described as purposeful conflict that ultimately promotes the group's development. And for what I thought about controversy, the first thing I thought about was Colin Kaepernick. And I remember there was so much controversy around him displaying, him protesting, standing during the national anthem and, other things like that. And though that did create a lot of controversy, the message that he was trying to display was a bigger picture. And I feel like as months and years went on, more people began to realize that. Okay, next we have citizenship, which is seeing oneself as part of a greater whole, engaged in community, and awareness of issues that affect the entire group. And I honestly wanted to bring it back to the co-founders themselves, Patrice, Ashley, and Opal. I thought that bringing it back home to the ones that initially started this movement and gave it a name and organization, I felt that them seeing themselves as part of this movement was very impactful for them, because they were creating the community to which others could feel like they can have an open space to share and testify about how they've experienced many things within the organization, whether it be hardship or not having a place to communicate.
So thank you so much to Elizabeth and her team for reaching out to me. I really appreciate you guys just taking me into consideration. So, hey, my name is Elijah Rashad Oliver. I'm a sophomore finance major at Howard University in Washington, D.C. And one of the first things that kind of comes to mind when I think of the movement is our parts in it. And it's extremely important that every single person in America, in the world, really tries to take on some major part of the Black Lives Matter movement and major parts of the civil rights movement, even if it's just, something as simple as picking up litter in their streets. And one of the ways that I've kind of seen my part in the movement going, or more or less, one of the ways I've seen my part in the movement grow is that I no longer am in the streets as I used to be. So I, of course, was the two-time president of the NAACP Memphis Youth Council, and I used to organize events and that sort of thing. And I've taken a more corporate approach to furthering not only diversity, but furthering the Black race. So whereas a lot of my peers and stuff took to the streets back in last June, last July, for the George Floyd protests, I kind of decided to take a step back. And one of the things that I worked on for the summer was making sure that HBCU students could have really dope opportunities. One way that I did this was I partnered with the Utah Jazz, and I'm currently working with Raymond James to help them build out diversity and inclusion programs. So whereas I see a lot of my peers really being passionate about being in the streets, I think I'm much more valuable in the boardroom. There's certainly strength in numbers, but I definitely think that my part, even, just one person, I think it's going to go a very long way to helping a lot of Black people make a lot of money. And I think that once we are more, not necessarily financially stable, but once we have more financial, I guess you could say, holding perhaps, or once we have a higher financial stake in the US, I think that we'll be able to demand a lot more respect. The Black dollar already spends like crazy. I think with the Popeye chicken sandwich last year, we just kind of see that like when Black people do something, it pops off. It's going to pop off. And we don't have a choice but to do that. So I think when we have even more money to back up what we do now, we did that with $5 or $6. Imagine if we have Black entrepreneurs buying up real estate all across Black neighborhoods and redeveloping it and those sorts of things. So my part in the movement has definitely changed a bit, but I'm super excited that I'm getting to enact change and change a lot of people's lives in a really big way on a small scale. So I don't necessarily think that I'm a leader much more than anyone else is. We're definitely leaders in our own lives, and we definitely have our own impact on certain people. I lead my little cousins, I lead certain friends in that sense, but I would definitely say I'm a leader. I think everyone's a leader, whether that be in a positive or negative light. But as far as the Black Lives Matter movement, I think if you said my name around anybody who's seriously involved with the group, they would not know who I was, like at all, unless they knew me from somewhere else. So I wouldn't necessarily say that within the movement, within the organization I am, but as far as the movement, I would say I'm at least striving to be a leader in the sense that, as I said before, I am trying to provide HBCU students with some really unique corporate opportunities that hopefully will end up with them, becoming millionaires, being in the C-suite, and being able to give back and rebuild their communities. I'm a 6'3" Black man. I weigh 175 pounds, and I do not look very, depending on what I'm wearing, I can either look very kind or very kind of scary almost, very menacing. That should really say about as much as, what I think my involvement in the Black Lives Matter movement should be. I am probably prime time to, be racially profiled or, experience police brutality. They're looking for somebody who looks like me a lot of the time. So it's extremely important. It's important for me. It's important for every other 6'3" Black male who, is not famous, and really famous ones as well. But it's instrumental. It's absolutely instrumental. It's necessary that I'm involved in it. I think it's necessary that everyone is involved in it, regardless of race, because Black people really have tried to back other races and stand behind other communities and that sort of thing. So considering that we are such a big minority group, I'd say it's a very big deal that we involve ourselves with it. As I kind of said before, I'm a 6'3" Black man. I quite literally am. I am what people are trying to keep safe. So I think it's extremely important that that I do have connects to it, and I because I look the way I look, of course, I'm connected to it. But I wouldn't say that I wouldn't be connected to this movement if it were, for any other race of people. So I'm for sure connected to it personally just because of my appearance. And honestly, the fact that that last summer we literally had every single major company across the US releasing some type of statements. I think that while a lot of them were, I guess, half-hearted, being able to be recognized like that, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. And for almost every single person in the world to recognize us like that, I think that's been huge. Getting people to say Black Lives Matter, whether that be in a positive light or negative light, the meaning, no matter the tone, is that Black lives do matter when they say that word. When they say that word, so putting those types of words into people's mouths, into their spirits, and that type of thing, I think that that's extremely important to society as well. I think what you speak kind of becomes like what your heart believes in a sense. So I'd say that, constantly having people speak those words into existence is a really big thing. And then even besides that, Black Lives Matter has put into policy, they've helped to, I'm trying to think. The BLM organization has reached out and helped to disband police forces. They've created diversity and inclusion like planning basically for companies, so they can essentially reach out to BLM and they will give them actionable steps to help to diversify their workforce and increase Black equity within the company. And I for sure think that that's another huge thing that the Black Lives Matter organization has contributed to the movement.
My name is Kayana, and I'm going to be talking about how the historical context of Black Lives Matter inform the way we live, lead, and learn today. Black Lives Matter started on July 13, 2013, on the same day George Zimmerman was acquitted for the murder of Trayvon Martin. Black Lives Matter gained national prominence as a response to the murder of another innocent Black man named Mike Brown in 2014 by a police officer. These injustices caused an uproar because they weren't the first of their kind to happen. The voices of these Black people needed to be heard and acknowledged. And today, the way we live, lead, and learn is a direct reflection of how we can do that. Oftentimes, as Black people in the United States, we live in fear that our family could be next. We take extra precautions in stores, at parks, or in our own homes to ensure our safety. Black Lives Matter allows Black people to not feel alone and to be heard. We lead by example. If we want to make change, we lead by living our lives and showing everyone kindness. We speak up when we see injustices towards Black people, regardless of our race. This has not been something that we have done in the past. Black Lives Matter has given us that chance. We learn by having difficult conversations with our peers, family, and coworkers. We ask our Black friends and family what we can do or how we can help. In the last year, Black Lives Matter has been at its highest. The way we live, lead, and learn have changed and will constantly keep evolving. In its earliest days, Black Lives Matter was just something we saw on social media as a hashtag. Today, it is an organization that has given voices and confidence to Black people. We feel more comfortable leading by speaking up for Black lives and having challenging conversations. Our neighbors and friends feel more comfortable learning by asking questions. We all collectively live knowing we can make change by speaking up for everyday injustices towards Black people.
In conclusion, the Black Lives Matter movement is a global movement that is 6 years strong and losing no momentum as they plow through and eradicate injustices against the Black communities around the world.